Even though Jade, eventually Jade Skywalker, would eventually marry Luke and have a son together who they would name Ben, of course after one of Luke's mentors, there was a time when Jade first hated Luke and it was her sole mission to find and destroy him. Jade was born in 17 BBY after the Great Jedi Purge, during a time where any remaining Jedi were being hunted down. She didn't remember much about her own parents as she was taken from them at a very young age by Emperor Palpatine to be trained in the ways of the Force. She was taken to Coruscant, which was of course already under Imperial rule at this time, where she would be put through a rigorous training regime, which included training with Palpatine's Royal Guard, and by the age of 14, she was already highly skilled in assassination and espionage skills. She was made into an agent of the Empire in one of Palpatine's hands, where she proved to be very useful to her master, carrying out missions and doing his bidding. However, her status was kept secret, and many who saw Jade assumed her to be a dancer or one of the Emperor's concubines. There were various Emperor's hands, however none of them knew about the others and assumed that they were the only one. Jade had such a powerful connection to the Force that she could even hear Palpatine's voice telepathically from anywhere in the galaxy. The Emperor was quite fond of Jade, and would even at times allow her to take time to relax, away from carrying out his will on various worlds. Palpatine's trust in her was so great that after the Battle of Yavin and the destruction of the first Death Star, Jade would even spy on Darth Vader himself and deliver her reports back to the Emperor. It was during these times that Jade would become envious of Vader and could even sense the conflict inside of him, and not being able to understand this seeming obsession that Vader had with a young rebel pilot named Luke Skywalker. Mara would begin to hope that Vader would make a move to overthrow Palpatine, so that she could destroy him and take his place at the Emperor's side as his true apprentice. In between the Battle of Hoth and the Battle of Endor, Jade would begin to learn of her master's concerns over Luke Skywalker, and she would be sent to Jabba's palace disguised as a palace dancer to wait for Luke to arrive. It was here that she would even meet and have a brief conversation with C-3PO after he and R2 arrived first at the palace. She would introduce herself as Erica. However, things took a turn as one of Jabba's security detail would begin to suspect Mara of attempting to assassinate Jabba and would try to arrest her, causing Mara to flee through a tunnel, running through multiple rows of guards and even witnessing Luke kill the Rancor. She asked for Jabba to allow her to join them on the sail barge. However, he simply provided her with a land speeder and told her not to return. Though Palpatine was displeased with Mara about how things turned out at Jabba's, he did still find her useful, and she would continue to carry out various missions for him over time. She was on one of these missions when, through the Force, she witnessed the destruction of her master by Luke and Vader. Palpatine, his voice reverberating through the Force, gave her one final command: "You will kill Luke Skywalker." This command would play over and over in her head after this moment as she hunted down Skywalker any chance that she could. No longer able to live the life of luxury due to Palpatine's death, Mara would rely on odd jobs for some time to make ends meet, and would eventually begin living the life of a smuggler when she joined forces with Talon Karrde, another smuggler, after she saved his life in an ambush which would take the life of Karrde's second in command. Months into working with Karrde, through sheer luck or will of the Force, Mara and Karrde would emerge from hyperspace at the exact location where Luke Skywalker's damaged X-Wing was floating through space. This was during the Thrawn campaign, and Grand Admiral Thrawn had placed a bounty on Luke's head, leading Karrde to contemplate turning Luke over to him. Mara immediately wanted to kill Luke, however Karrde wouldn't allow it and instead kept Luke prisoner along with R2. Luke would eventually escape and Mara would chase after them, but they both unfortunately crashed in the forests below. Though Mara's hatred for Luke over killing her master had not diminished, and she still had Palpatine's final order echoing in her head, Mara would hold off on her attempts to kill Luke as they both saw that they needed the other to survive the dangers that were waiting for them in the forest. The two were able to make it to civilization only to be attacked by a squad of stormtroopers. Thankfully, they had help fending them off as Han, Lando, and some of Karrde's men arrived and helped fight the troopers before leaving the planet behind, with Mara once again separated from Luke. Sometime later, Mara would find herself captured by Imperials due to Jade's role in saving the Solo family from an Imperial attack. where she would begin earning some trust from them despite her past. While imprisoned, Mara would learn of Thrawn's use of clones, and would remember Palpatine's cloning facility on the planet Wayland, home of Mount Tantus, which we do have a video on if you'd like to check that out. Mara Jade would eventually be rescued by Luke, Han, Chewie, and Lando and boarded the Millennium Falcon and made their way towards Wayland. It's here that Luke began to see that Mara was acting more on Palpatine's final command to her than she was on her own volition or instincts. The group eventually had an encounter with a crazed clone of Jedi Joruus C'baoth, who had been used by Thrawn in some instances, only to be imprisoned on Wayland by Thrawn for becoming too unstable and powerful to be of use to him any longer. C'baoth attempted to turn Luke and Mara to the dark side, and even pitted Luke against a clone of himself, which we also have a video on. Mara would use Leia's lightsaber to end the lives of C'baoth as well as the clone of Luke, and with the clone's death, the telepathic connection that the Emperor had over her was severed, and for the first time in a long time, she was free. Mount Tantus would be destroyed, and the group would flee to safety. After all these events, Mara would renounce the dark side of the Force and would begin training in the ways of the light. Years later, Mara and Luke would eventually marry and start a family. However, I think that will be a video for another time. But that is why Mara Jade started off hating Luke Skywalker and wanted to end his life, due to her being raised as a personal Imperial assassin to Palpatine, seeking revenge for his death at the hands of Luke and Vader, and primarily due to Palpatine's telepathic order planted in her head for so long until she was finally able to free herself of it. This story comes from the Thrawn trilogy, beginning with Heir to the Empire if you'd like to read it for yourself, which I would highly recommend as it's a great set of books and highly regarded among the Star Wars fandom. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks as always for watching, and may the Force be with you.